Imagine there is a stranger living inside of you and he's constantly whispering in your ears. But until this day, you haven't really met that person and understood what kind of character he has. Carl Jung calls that the shadow. It is the part that lies in the depths of your unconscious. And for most of us, it stays unrevealed most of our lives. After watching this video, you will understand what the shadow is, how it's formed, the collective as well as the personal shadow, what archetypes are, how you can recognize them in movies or even music. And I will give you a step-to-step guide how to recognize your own shadows and how you can integrate them in your life. So what is actually the shadow? Like I said before, it's the part that lies deep in our psyche, in the unconscious, which means that we're not really aware of what those parts or those patterns inside of us are doing, how they are acting out through our actions in day-to-day life. You might feel envy or jealousy and you don't really understand why. And all of this goes back to your personal shadow. So in other words, the shadow holds all the parts that you're suppressing or denying. So you're saying it's not really there, but if you're really truly honest to yourself, you will recognize that those parts are inside of you. So the shadow contains all the parts that are not accepted from our society. For example, anger, envy, shame, jealousy, or sexuality. But the personal shadow doesn't only hold those negative parts, it also holds hidden strengths that we just don't recognize as a strength. We see it more as a weakness. This often goes back to our education or the household that we grew up in. For example, if you grew up in an environment that saw practicality as something really important, it might be that those people pushed away more art or creative things. So over the years, you develop this judgment towards art. But if you have never really looked deep within, beyond those judgments, you don't know if this is maybe one of your biggest strengths. Jung used to say that the parts that we don't want to be shape our personality. In other words, if there are certain things you really don't want to be, let's use the example if you grew up in an environment where showing vulnerability was not okay if you were a man. You might develop the idea that vulnerability equals weakness, and weakness is often not acceptable among other men. So if you develop this belief, it means that you suppressed those feelings of showing yourself vulnerable or weak or soft. But by suppressing, that doesn't mean that it's not there. It just means that you're pushing it into your unconscious. So whenever those feelings arise inside of you and you're denying that they are there, you have to mask them with other emotions. So for example, when you're in a social situation where you feel suddenly this weakness, you either mask it by making several jokes, or you're getting angry or more loud. And this coping mechanism doesn't allow you to show yourself the way you are, which makes you really unauthentic. And by being unauthentic to other people, it will get more hard to create a deep connection, which is built on trust and authenticity. Furthermore, you're even projecting your own doubts about yourself, or that you're holding about what a man should be on other people. So when there's a man expressing vulnerability, you will classify him as a weak man, and you will not be able to understand that showing this vulnerability is actually a big strength. Because when you allow yourself to show who you are, and you're not scared of the judgment from other people, then this is what creates character, and this is true strength that lies in all of us. So as you can see, projections are a great way to recognize your own shadows. If you judge someone else as arrogant, yes, it might be that this person is arrogant, but more important, what does it tell you about yourself? Maybe there is this hidden desire of being more confident or of being more true to yourself, speaking your truth and putting your boundaries. So how does the shadow actually forms? As we already talked about, childhood is one of the biggest moments in life where we create beliefs that are unconscious because we adopt them from our family, friends and teachers. As a child, you were feeling that certain behaviors were not accepted from your environment. For example, in early stages it was okay to walk naked into a room, but at a certain age the reactions became kind of different from the people around you. And they were telling you, no, it's not acceptable to be naked. So you developed this shame because something that was you was not okay for other people. And that is one of the biggest reasons why so many people feel shame while being nude in an environment. But not only in childhood, also in the adult life, certain shadows can be formed. Let's say you're in a relationship with a partner and this partner chooses to betray you or cheat on you. When you don't allow yourself to feel these emotions afterwards and realize that you haven't been able to see it coming, you will develop a new shadow that you suppress, and in your next relationship, the shadow will slightly shine through being jealous or not trusting the other person. And you may develop certain beliefs like, I can only trust myself. So one way out of this is acknowledging that we all hold those shadows inside of us. Not only the partner that betrayed us, it also lies within all of us. And through creating this empathy within, you will change your whole view on that topic. But that doesn't mean that you should stay with a person that betrayed you. But it means more to recognize that there is also this part inside of you that sometimes wishes to be wild and lose all the responsibility. But not only we as individuals suppress certain ideas. This is also happening on a bigger scale in different countries and all over humanity. It means that we're collectively living in denial about certain topics. And it's really easy, if we look back in history, to recognize those shadows. Racism or how we were treating women seems so obviously wrong to us today. But I would like to challenge you and ask that question: what is the collective shadow that's currently in our society? A few obvious topics would be how we treat the environment or the way we treat animals. Another way to look at this collective perspective is to go more into archetypes. If you read certain stories or books or listen to music, you will recognize some patterns that are always appearing. Jung called this the archetypes. By this he means that there are certain figures that are appearing in every story. So we have, for example, the mother, the great hero, the wise old man, or the shadow, symbolized through an evil character. If you look at the movie Matrix, for example, the roles are not so hard to recognize. You have the hero, Neo, and you also find the wise old man, Morpheus, or Agent Smith, which is symbolizing the shadow. And last but not least, the Great Mother, which is portrayed through Trinity. So the next time you watch a movie, I want you to reflect more deeply. What are they representing? And even deeper, what are these archetypal roles reflecting me about my own consciousness? So let's talk about how you can recognize your own shadows, because it's not so easy to answer. The first and most important is triggers. The moment you start judging someone else heavily, ask yourself, what is this person representing that a part of me also wishes to be like that? And by saying that, I don't mean that your judgments are necessarily wrong. They can be quite precise and right. Shadows are sometimes ugly and uncomfortable. But by seeing them and judging them so heavily, we suppress them and we don't acknowledge that they are also acting inside of us. And by not doing that, it makes us even more dangerous, because we're not seeing how those shadows play out in our day-to-day life. But the moment we become aware what our shadow is and how it's acting through us, we have the ability to reflect about it and prevent damage to other people by understanding it before we're acting out on a certain shadow. In other words, this is also called projecting. When we project certain ideas about ourselves on other people. So I hate in you what I deny in me. And look, especially in your close relationships. Are there certain patterns that are repeating? Are you often finding a partner that cheats on you? Or are there other patterns in your relationship that you don't like? So ask yourself, why am I attracting those people into my life? How am I inviting them? And last but not least, dreams. Jung used to work with people that had a certain memory about their dreams. And he was trying to find symbols reflected through people that are appeared in the dream. So the invitation here is to reflect about your own dreams. Are there certain patterns that are happening all and all over again? Or are there certain people appearing in almost every dream? If so, reflect more deep about the people. What do they represent? And what does it mean for me? So now we're gonna talk about a step-to-step guide, how you can recognize those patterns and shadows inside of you and transform them in your life. Like I said before, the easiest way is to observe your triggers. Whenever someone triggers you with their behavior, write it down in a notebook and later that day reflect about it. Why exactly is it triggering me? When someone appears really arrogant, what does it mean for you? Is there a part inside of you that wants this arrogance in a certain way? So in arrogance it could be standing up for yourself, protecting your boundaries. That would be a healthy expression of this shadow. An unhealthy way to express that would be arrogance or stepping over people. And once you get this clarity about what shadow is there inside of you and how you can act it out in a positive way, then set yourself certain intentions, how you can live this new value on a daily basis. Another way to understand your shadows lies in feeling your emotions and dropping the story. Let's say you feel angry at someone else. Drop the content. Don't lose yourself in the mind by saying this person did something wrong, which is morally not okay. Yeah, that might be true, but stay with the feeling. Where do you feel it in the body? What quality does this feeling have? Become an observer of this emotion and try to get a deeper connection to it. Over time you will see that you get less reactive and you're not acting out so much on your impulses, which is kind of a way to control your shadows. Another important point is to accept that there is shadow inside of us. We all want to be pure and good, and this idea comes way back from the church and Christianity. And yes, of course, we should drive towards the light and towards taking the right and good decisions. But regardless how much we grow in our life and how much we reflect about our own patterns, there will be always appearing new shadows. And this is part of life. So instead of denying that they are there, you have to get towards accepting them and getting to know those qualities. And this is really uncomfortable because it seems cruel, because often there is a lot of cruelty and anger and madness inside of us, which we really don't want to live out. And I know it feels really uncomfortable to face those parts. But in order to live a better life, you need to be aware that it's there. And you will not able to push it away. It will always come back, regardless how strong you push it. So get this awareness for those shadows and get to know them a little bit more. And when you understand in what moments they appear in your life, you will be able to recognize it, those small impulses. And this gives you the power to say stop and to not act out on it. but therefore it needs to be in your conscious. But why does all of that really matter so much? It does because if you're not aware how your shadows act inside of you, it's the same like driving a car with a blindfold on. At a certain point, you will crash the car. So you need to bring light in the darkness. You need to throw that blindfold to the back of the car and get a certain sense of what is happening in front of me and how do I navigate this car through the traffic. Jung used to say, validating and understanding your shadows is the only way to become whole. And whole doesn't mean perfect. It means being yourself without having those fragments of different parts lying around of you. So the shadow is not your enemy, it's your greatest teacher. And to finish this, a last quote from Jung. One does not become enlightened by imagining figures of light, but by making the darkness conscious. And now I want you to reflect about yourself. Did something trigger you in that video? And if so, what part of you did it reflect? Feel free to share some of your reflections in the comments, and if there are other topics you would like to learn more about.